Yes, I'm here.
Okay, are you ready to resume?
Yes.
All right, I'll call us back to order. And then let's go back to check, see if there was anyone have a public comment. I'll reopen public comment.
And any members of the public wishing to make public comment, you can do so by raising your hand, and you'll be allowed to speak for 3 minutes. Pastor Britt, you may now have the floor.
Thank you, Dominique, and welcome, and congratulations on you being the new city clerk. I just want to get on and say I'm glad to be a part of this meeting tonight, and hope it's the third meeting of the month that Councilman Wizard is asking for. I'm batting for him to make sure that we get 3 meetings that we're not on all night long. So I yield back my time. Thank you so much for this special meeting.
Any members of the public wishing to make public comment may do so up to 3 minutes. You can do so by using the raise your hand feature. Mayor Oglesby, there are no other participants wishing to speak at this time.
Okay, thank you. Next, we'll go into our agendized item, which is the study session. Affordable housing strategic study session. We'll receive a presentation from the city manager and his team. Mr. City Manager.
Thank you, Mayor. As the council will recall, we had a very fruitful discussion of a concept for housing here in Seaside, and how to both increase the availability of resources for our housing fund and provide a wide array of housing from market rate housing to affordable housing. And we had that discussion as really a conceptual discussion. You know, we cited it on a known location, and I think that got some folks a little bit too focused on the known location because it really meant to be conceptual. So we're pulling back a little bit from the let's present a plan for comment to let's have a discussion about what are the opportunities and challenges of providing more affordable housing here in Seaside. You know, there are a range of challenges. Undertaking housing programs is intensively difficult here on the Central Coast. We have a number of planning and water availability challenges. But Seaside is blessed with a wide array of public property and property on which the city can plan for housing projects, can partner with the private sector for housing projects, and can undertake housing projects on its own or do so with an aligned nonprofit. The council is aware that we have recently been blessed with our first full-time housing program manager, Mr. Nurse. He is quite a capable professional, and we can do a good amount of work. Mr. Nurse has been focused on advancing the ADU program, which is moving forward here in Seaside, and that's one component of a full suite of housing options that we may undertake. The council is also aware, of course, that we have been working diligently over the past few years with the private sector in order to have private developers build, or plan at least, large-scale projects. So we have, of course, the Campus Town project with more than 200 affordable housing dwelling units associated with that. And we have the Ascent project. We have the Nurses Barracks project. So there's a good amount of, I shouldn't say good amount, there's a historic amount of private sector involvement in bringing affordable housing to the community through the entitlement of large-scale projects. So if the city does nothing further, there will be hundreds of affordable housing projects moving forward. But the city can do other things. And as we discussed at our last study session on the topic, we can both work with the private sector and promote accessory dwelling units. We can also do other things. We can, intensify allowable density versus via upzoning. We can build affordable housing with nonprofits that already exist. We can build affordable housing by creating an aligned nonprofit here in Seaside that would do that work. We can use public land for affordable housing. We can use modular construction. We can have building code revisions that assist us as well. So there's a wide range of options and strategies and tactics that we can employ. But what Mr. Nurse and I are here tonight to do is to listen to the council, discuss the strategies that they would like us to undertake. I'm going to make just two more comments. So one is that we have about $6.6 million in our combined affordable housing funds. So we do have resources. The last thing I'll say is yes, while we have a full-time housing program manager at long last here in the city, and that's a very good thing, the amount of need far outstrips the ability of any one individual, no matter how skilled, in order to fill that need. So my observation over the course of my career is the things that cities get done best are done best when those things are resourced. I have supplied this creating and operating nonprofits white paper by the League of California Cities a couple of times to council members to pique their interest in what might occur and how might we achieve more success if we crafted an aligned nonprofit. So create an organization that can use the resources in our bank account in order to go do that work, to do the planning, to do the construction, to do the leasing and or sale of affordable housing. So that's my brief and non-site specific presentation. I'm happy to answer any questions and look forward to the council's direction.
Well, thank you for a good presentation, very focused. The council, we're having this strategic study session for housing, particularly affordable housing development, because this is one of our strategic goals that we came up with, and I believe all council members are appreciative of the fact that we need to create more affordable housing, particularly focus on those that is hard to find housing for now that are housing burden or rent burden. With that, I would say that this conversation is more of a, again, strategy and philosophy. A lot of this stuff that we're going to talk about tonight, the city manager already understands where we're trying to go and what we're trying to do. It's just to be able to flush out as council members, listening to the citizens and as council members, what is our understanding of all of the options that we have to create affordable housing at a truly affordable level. It's not really talking about any projects particularly. It's just about making sure that the city manager and his staff have a very focused view and some clear directions about things that you guys want them to start on and bring back over time. So with that, I'll just go first with my thinking, and then we'll see if there's any hands up. Like I said from the start, I'm very supportive of the nonprofit. I think the city of Seaside should be in the business as much as possible, creating housing that is truly affordable for those that are in our workforce and those are making, around $75,000 and less, couples of up to $150,000 and less. So that's the first thing. But also open to, making sure we push forward our ADUs, our junior ADUs, and looking at that over time again to see if there's more incentives that we can do for that, to encourage property owners to put ADUs and junior ADUs on their property. I think we should partner with other low-income housing providers where we can, when we can, just again, to see that synergy of working together to create more affordable units. We doing a good job of, I believe, with our for-profit developers, requiring them to do a certain percentage of affordable housing within their development. And so I think that is taking care of itself, the private developers, but that's part of the strategy that we all have to have a good understanding of. And then, let me see. I believe the focus of any development as it relates to Seaside, and I think the city manager mentioned upzoning, and I know most of the council members understand all this stuff and have similar thoughts. I think the main thing for me is when we talk about affordability, it's not affordability based on the market rate, but truly us as an entity creating or incentivizing others to build affordable housing. And more than likely, the way you make that affordable for our workforce is build smaller units. And I think that would be more affordable for people and allow more people to get into the market. So those are my comments. I won't prejudge how long this meeting is supposed to take, but those are my thoughts. And so at a certain point, this is a study session, so I will allow some freewheeling and maybe some questions back and forth. So just let me know if you got questions for anyone or staff members, and we'll just go back and forth. Is there any hands?
Yes, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, you didn't press your hand, so okay. I just want to make sure I got it in my queue over here, so I'm gonna be looking over here, and then if you guys just want to do that too, that's fine. Councilmember Campbell.
Okay, thank you. I guess we'll start with questions. The presentation, what I consider was actually a really great presentation the other day on using prefabs over on the lots there. It was in that presentation, it was stated how many affordable units we need to build by a certain time. I don't. Did the city manager or Mr. Nurse, do you remember what that was, that the state is requiring us to build?
Thank you for your question. It's 393 units by 2023.
393 by 2023. Thank you. If we did, if we just allowed the actual developers now that we've engaged with, say in Campus Town and Ascent, and to build those affordable units, do we actually believe they would get? I don't think they would get to 393 by 2023. What are we actually hoping they could accomplish by 2023?
Based on the numbers that they have agreed to, Campus Town would do 297, Ascent 16, and Parker Flats 8. That would total 321. Sorry.
321. Okay. Thank you. I mean, that's a great number, but I really think it's optimistic to think that they would actually be building those in the by 2023. Overly optimistic. Do we have any idea how many developers have built affordable units, say, in the last 15 years?
I don't have that exact number.
10 years, 5 years. I mean, when was the last time developers actually built affordable units?
Yeah, it's not a significant number in any.
Right. Yeah. I'm just trying to lay the groundwork here that if past performance is any indication, I wouldn't get my hopes up on developers. It's okay. That's all right. So the answer to the question is we don't really have any record recently of developers performing along those lines. I did read through the paper that you've attached maybe 3 times, 4 times, sent out to the council. So thank you for that, Mr. City Manager. I finally did read through that. And one thing that is suggested in there, I mean, I know it's very complicated legal things that we can all work out later, but one thing that is suggested in there is that we don't duplicate efforts. If there's already a nonprofit that is locally that does the same thing, it makes sense to save the time of creating a new nonprofit to do that. I'm thinking of Mid-Penn or Chispa or something like that. Is that, Mr. City Manager, would you consider that a reasonable option? And should we reach out to consider reaching out to them?
Yeah, I think it's not an either or, but it's a both. I think I have had discussions with regional housing nonprofits, and they're good discussions. They tend not, well, they haven't resulted in a project yet. So the idea of creating an aligned nonprofit that focuses on Seaside is I think advantageous because it will be specifically focused on Seaside. And honestly, it's not that difficult to create a nonprofit. I mean, I did it myself before. It takes 30 days or so. So I would do both. I would not exclude either the current nonprofits nor exclude creating our own aligned nonprofit.
Okay, thank you. So if we did go down the road of creating our own nonprofit, another thing that's mentioned is nonprofits do a lot of fundraising, which I think would be kind of a heavy lift, I think, for a locally run nonprofit. They can also receive grants, which I imagine would be our main target. Is that what you're thinking, is that it would be funded not just from our existing 6.6, but also through grants?
Yes, and ultimately through
Return.
lease revenue and sale revenue. So the money that we have is really just seed money, and the nonprofit would develop its own sources, again, some of which are not available to cities. So that's one of the advantages of a nonprofit. The other advantage of a nonprofit is, it doesn't have to deal with all the things that we deal with. We don't have to worry about the fire budget or how many streets are we improving. Cities have a lot of complex things that we have to do, and if the city creates an aligned nonprofit that takes on some of that work can be happening while we're doing other things.
Okay. No, okay, thank you. Those are great answers. I suppose my last question is the proposal that was made with those prefabs over on Kenyon Delray, excuse me. I know you could say it's basically the concept is modular itself. It can be, relocated to different properties. Do you have any other properties in mind? I've been kind of racking my brain and trying to think of a better location.
I have multiple locations in mind.
Okay.
We could come back and show the council where we can do a variety of those nodes. I mean, some of which require CEQA in order to move forward with, obviously.
Wait, I'm sorry, but just to give me an idea. I cannot. I'm not, again, like I'm just drawing a blank on the locations.
Yeah. We have the main gate parcel that we can place something on. We own hundreds of acres in Seaside East that we could do work on. We own small infill parcels across the city.
Okay,
we could acquire other vacant parcels, or the nonprofit could acquire other vacant parcels privately owned in order to do small scale projects.
Oh, okay. No, I mean, that's, I love the idea of thinking big and thinking of Main Gate and thinking of Seaside East or whatever. That's all, that I don't mind thinking big, but I would, what I prefer is actual progress. And so the reason why I mention that is because there's no way we're going to have utilities and the infrastructure for Seaside East or probably even Main Gate, let alone these units built by 2023. It's just, I mean, that's a pipe dream. Whereas the utilities are there already at the property on Canyon Del Rey. You're right. The infill on other properties that we own is a great idea. But anyway, the reason why I'm asking those questions is just because I really did like the concept that was proposed, because it is something we could take care of pretty quickly. We could expend some of these funds pretty quickly and create housing, which is what we've been talking about for years and years and years. So anyway, that's really it. I made my point about that. I really do like I really did. I think it would behoove the council to pursue the concept on Canyon Del Rey. That's all I have for now. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. I'm still looking for, I see you, Mayor Pro Tem. I would just say that the concept here is not how we're going to build so many houses by 2023. It's about how you guys want to get there. So we need to let staff know that we want them to get there, and then they'll come back and tell us how they're going to get there. We haven't really talked about it yet. So excellent questions. Mayor Pro Tem, and then whoever else wants to go, raise your hand, please, so I can see them. Go ahead, Mayor Pro Tem.
One question that ties into Mr. Campbell mentioned. You mentioned you envision 321 homes by 2023. Mr. Campbell and I would agree that may be a hope. In reference to is there any status for those that are listening on the Glover project, for lack of a better word, the nurses barracks, and or the Ascent, as far as getting anywhere those things done? Is there any status on that?
I think Ascent is moving forward faster than the Glover project. Glover project has some challenges associated with it. The Ascent project is in progress of being of having applications for actual development. And of course, the Main Gate, I'm sorry, not the Main Gate, the Campstown project is moving forward quickly.
Got it. And you may not know this, but how many potential land bills do we own? Like the places on, land pieces of land that are inside Seaside, like on Del Monte or Canyon Del Rey, do we own? And is there? You also mentioned that there is a potential to buy other land that might be available throughout the city of Seaside, be it on Broadway, be it on the other end of Broadway, that may have water already or not. Is there a number of that? Will you be providing that information to us later?
And
It
I
looks,
can give an answer
go ahead.
if you like. Thank you for the question. And there was a 2019 study, April 2019 study by staff that found about 35 infill lots throughout the city. A few of them were owned by the city. But those are along Broadway, on Fremont, and upper Seaside as well. Those could be purchased, or you can work with the landowners to develop those. And then there's several other sites that are owned by the city, such as the Alhambra Hillsdale Public Works site. That's a good developable site in downtown. So there, as the city manager said, there are a dozen sites throughout the city that could work, that are city owned or privately owned.
And then places like maybe the one on Del Monte or on Alhambra, they may have water already, where water would not be as large of an issue. Or other spots not to include those. Is that a true statement?
Yes.
Let's see. What back to the city manager, I think, or yourself, what is the benefit of creating a new nonprofit organizations rather than working with the existing nonprofits?
I think, there's pros and cons. The pros are they can be solely focused on Seaside. That's a significant benefit. The con is we would have to build that organization and resource it. Whereas the existing organizations are built, have experience, can do the work, but they are more broadly focused than here in Seaside. Again, I don't think it's a question of either or. I think it's a question of, can we do both? How do we get the advantages of something that's both solely focused on Seaside and have the experience of the existing nonprofits? I mean, you generally succeed not by finding one path, but by pursuing, on something as complex as this, but by pursuing multiple paths.
So this is kind of, my next question is kind of a question and kind of a statement of hope. So as you suggest that, working with a broad range of nonprofits, profits, etc., are you looking at potentially meeting with those groups could provide affordable housing or middle range housing or different types of housing, be it nonprofits, be it developers, etc., sitting around a round table or zooming around a round table, however you want to phrase it, and so they can participate in discussion, what's best for them, what's best for you, what percentage do you need to make, so they can help form a methodology for the best results, I guess is my question,
Yeah.
and a comment at the same time.
Yes, I'm more than open to doing that. The other thing that I just want to point out, and this is not a criticism by any stretch of the imagination, but the reality is when you work with another organization that has its own mission and its own focus, if what you're proposing doesn't neatly fit into that, you have a very nice conversation, but it goes sort of nowhere. I've had conversations with MidPen and CHSPA and have expressed an openness and willingness to work with them, and it hasn't materialized. And I guess I'll take the blame for that. So yes, we should do that, but we should also not be timid about creating something that is focused on Seaside.
And I could concur with that. I would just hope, my gut is concur with that. I hope is that you bring in, I'm making this up, the Jones developers or the Smith developers, FISBA, and all these groups around a Zoom meeting or something, or hopefully in person, and share thoughts and share and have a, as you would call it, a nice meeting, because maybe you can collaborate rather than separate. That was the concept.
Happy to do it.
Then just some thoughts, I guess, is that, I only thought, I agree with the concepts, but I'm more open personally on a wide range of housing, anything from very low affordable housing to middle range housing, a mixed match of opportunities, kind of that showed in your display, not one house fits all, and I think there's just a diversity of needs out there. We want to give people that want to move on up to another second range of housing. That opportunity, as well as the opportunity for people that are just getting in the market, as well as potentially people that are city employees, school teachers, etc. I think that's really important. I think we have a lot of people, I believe, that are living in two or three, out of the need, 2 or 3 families living in the same household. I think if we could provide those people the opportunity to get on their own house, it helps offset other concerns regarding parking, quality of life, shoppability as far as moving into another area, Seaside. I think it does a variety of positive things. I do believe everybody should pay for housing if we subsidize it to some level somehow. I think that is, I think, beneficial, and if we can use some of our profits on the high end, help to subsidize, or however you want to term that, I think that would be, I'd be fine with that. I just think that there's so much need out there for those that are living in 2 or 3 or 4 families to a house, that we need to give them the opportunity as a priority. As I mentioned earlier, I like the idea of a round table or a square table or a Zoom table to network and communicate with other groups that are providing that experience, as well as developers that might want to work with us rather than work against us in order to achieve the results. And let's see, I think as right now, I think those are my immediate thoughts. And the nonprofit versus a profit, there's good sides to both, and I think potentially there's nothing wrong with doing both. Just how is the mechanism of the nonprofit work? You never described that. I don't know if you want to describe that concept,
Sure.
or do we need?
Sure.
What do you envision?
I'll do it very broadly. If I were to create a nonprofit focused on affordable housing in Seaside, I would create a 7 to 9 member board and solely focused in their charter on providing affordable housing. I would, once they're established and once the board members are selected and on board, I would hope that they would resource that agency with an executive director in order to carry out the work. I think the city would then contract with the nonprofit in order to provide affordable housing. We would hold them, the city would hold them accountable for performance. They would go off and do, again, a wide range of work. They could find a infill site and start developing it, tomorrow if it's appropriately entitled. They could look out to the horizon and start doing some entitlement work on larger scale projects. They would be an entity that is only built and only doing affordable housing in Seaside. That would be their complete mission, and they would be focused on that. That's the idea.
And just one last question. The executive director, I assume, would be paid.
I would hope, well, it doesn't have to. I mean, if you could find a perfect person who would do it for free, that'd be great, but I'm not sure.
Well, logically
That's a
speaking,
little
that
wishful.
person would be paid and the city would act as an advisory role as such. Is that part of?
I use the word aligned because
Okay.
you want them to be, they need to be independent, and you want them to be independent so they can go do their work. But we, the city, could contract with them for specific performance tasks or targets. And, if they perform, well, that's great. We'd move forward with them. If they fail to perform, it's been nice knowing you. We're going to move on.
But we would have some kind of relationship with them, no matter how you look at it. There would be some kind of.
Yes, we would not control them. We would contract with them.
Right, so there would be communication.
Oh, absolutely.
Okay. I think that's it for now. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. I'll just add to city manager, like I said, maybe not control them, but definitely oversight. And if their mandate is to build this type of housing within Seaside, and we created the entity, I think it's some way that we can disband the entity if they're not doing the work. Council member Wizard.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And I have to say that I am just so pleased with the direction that this conversation is going. And I wanted to very clearly and explicitly say, Mr. Mayor Pro Tem, I am so just thrilled with your thinking around this, and that I am right next to you on the direction your questions are going. They were largely the same as mine. In broad strokes, I agree totally that if we can bring more people to the community, or at least provide housing opportunities for people who are already here but live 2 or 3 or 4 families to one household, that that both increases their quality of life for having one household per one home, and also creates less pressure on individual families' pocketbooks, so that they can then go out for a meal or buy the car that they need but weren't able to afford, and that creates revenue within our community that goes back into the city's bank account. And in addition to the financial benefits that were spoken about, the moral imperative that we have as a community that doesn't have a lot of money, and we have $6.5 million sitting in an account, and we're trying to figure out the best way to spend it. And all the while, there is no doubt that we've got more than 1,000 homeless children, and that we have seniors sleeping in cars because they don't have homes. And we have families that are, with young children that live in households with complete strangers because they can't afford to have their own home. And as much as we can support those folks and make their life a little bit easier by providing decent, safe, and affordable housing, we absolutely should do that. And to hear my colleagues say that that's something they support is heartwarming. And I'm just so excited that that's the direction that we seemingly collectively want to go. I don't know what the exact makeup is of the nonprofit, and whether the nonprofit wants to do like what Mayor Pro Tem suggested with the cross subsidy, where you 4 or 6 units and they kind of blend the incomes so that one person maybe pays market rate, and then a lower income family that doesn't quite have as many resources, they enjoy a little bit less cost in their housing, and they support each other. All those things sound great to me. The nitty gritty of it, that's the next step, I think. But for our conversation, I'm wholly in support of the direction we're going. And so I don't have a whole lot of questions other than to say that I think that we're on the right track. And it would be great. My preference, if I could offer that, is that we focus on infill sites that the city already owns. I do have a question. I don't know if you have this information offhand, Mr. Nurse. Do you know how much water has come out of our ADU set aside? We had 5 acre-feet that we put aside for ADUs, and I think more than 0 applicants have accessed that, but I don't know that very many have accessed that.
Let's see. As of to date, I have a chart that's tracking it. We have allocated 1.1 acre-feet. So we have 3.9 acre-feet remaining to allocate.
The
to
ADU fund.
Okay.
That's only explicitly limited to the ADU fund, the ADU water fund.
Correctly.
Yeah.
Yes.
So if we found an infill site that it had enough water for one home, and we decided we want to put up a duplex there, we've got 3.9 acre-feet of water for affordable housing. Granted, it's currently allocated for ADUs, but it's not like we are not the agency that controls how that water gets used. It's our water, and if we decide, just like we moved it over to ADUs, if we want to move 0.5 over to fund an affordable housing project that's going to come out of the ground in the next 3 months, that's an option that we have. And I'm not suggesting that the council vote on that now, or we prioritize that, just that is a possibility. And we could even sell it to the nonprofit at the same rate that we would sell it to a private ADU family. So just tremendous amount of opportunity ahead of us. And I think this is absolutely the right direction for us to go. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Great comments. Anyone else? Seeing no other hands, we will take it out to the public. Public comment is now open.
Any members of the public wishing to make public comment, please use the raise your hand feature, and you will have 3 minutes to speak. If you're wishing to make public comment and you are calling in from the phone, you can press *9 to raise your hand. Ms. Gill, you are now on for public comment.
Good evening, Mayor, Council. I just have a question about this potential nonprofit. As far as it being a conflict of interest, potentially not quite something the city should be doing, it just doesn't sound like it works to me, and I'd like to hear a little bit more about that. We have nonprofits that we could be working hand in hand with, but it may not be as easy as having our own, but I'm wondering about, honestly, the legality of forming our own. Thank you.
Members of the public who are wishing to make public comment, please use the raise your hand feature, and you will have 3 minutes to speak. Diane Nielsen, you are now on the floor for public comment.
This doesn't have to do with the topic, but I am wondering if the public really does have access to this meeting right now, because all 3 links that I tried did not work, and I had to email the city clerk's number. I just wanted to make you aware of that I don't think it's just me that's having a problem getting into this very important meeting. Thank you.
Galaxy Tab A, you are now on the floor for public comment.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Hi, my name is Sarah Haller. I'd like to ditto what the last speaker said. I wasn't able to get into the meeting until half past the hour. I tried both the links in the published agenda and finally only got in because one of the council members sent me the Zoom link. So I do think it's important also, and I know it's hard during these times of COVID, but you know, we'd like to hear what's going on. So thank you very much.
Lisa Ann, you now have the floor to speak for public comment.
Good evening, Mayor and Council and others that are on this Zoom call. I'd echo the last two comments. We had difficulty and were able to get on by contacting a few people as well. In addition, I'm concerned about the idea of the city doing a nonprofit or having an entity of that sort. I really encourage the council to consider all the wonderful nonprofits that exist in Seaside. I realize maybe they're not directly involved with affordable housing, but there certainly are other nonprofits in our community that are, in the county that are. And it just seems that it really doesn't make sense for the city when it has, you know, we've cut staffing and we have difficulty, from what I understand, with just, you know, the level of staffing and things of that nature, that we would add this at this time. In addition, I really encourage, you know, that there's greater participation in this when as it does go forward, that the community is noticed in time, and that there's a round table or a square table, as Mr. Pacheco said, Councilmember Pacheco said, or whatever it is in our Zoom world today. And maybe it's even possible that we can meet at a park or someplace like that where we can be socially distanced and outside. So I hope the city staff as well as this council considers that going forward, because I think this community has some great ideas too of how to do things. Thank you. Appreciate your time.
Members of the public, if you're still wishing to make public comment, you can do so by raising your hand or pressing the *9 if you are calling in from a phone, and you will have 3 minutes to speak. Mayor, there do not seem to be any other members wishing to speak during public comment at this time.
Okay, thank you. We will close public comment. I just go with the notice to the, go back and forth with the city attorney for a second or two about access to this meeting. Again, this is just a study session, talk about some of the strategies that the council may want the city manager and staff to look at. So we're not adopting anything. We're not taking any formal actions. And I believe we did fix the access problems to the point where we're in good stead. Does that make sense, Madam City Attorney?
We did put the the appropriate Zoom link out, and are broadcasting on YouTube, although I will say that the YouTube channel is a different channel than the one we normally broadcast to, but it is out there on the internet. And yes, there's no action being taken tonight. This is purely a workshop. Council wishes to reschedule this or rehab this, they certainly
No,
can,
we don't.
not
That's not what
legally-
I'm asking you. No.
but it is not legally deficient.
Okay, that's what I want to be clear for the public, because we're not taking any actions. We're just discussing this. And before any of the things we're talking about happening, whether it's a nonprofit, whether we're talking about building any one unit, changing water over, building one unit or building 200 units, that will come before the council many a times. So that's why I just want to assure them that, the things we're talking about doing, the staff will go together and the staff will definitely listen to public comment again, or any comments that they call the city manager about and ask him, about their 2 cents. But then it will come before the council on these separate issues, and then the public gets to weigh in again. That's really what I want to be firm about and clear about. Then the access to the meetings. Again, we're doing the best job we can. We had technical difficulties starting the meeting. We recessed and we were able to overcome those, most of those concerns and issues. But I just tell the public we stand ready to do the best job we can to allow you guys to participate in a timely manner. Okay, and then someone talked about city manager and maybe city attorney towards the end or afterwards, the conflict of interest with, if we had a nonprofit. And there's so many steps before we get there. I just want you to speak your thoughts about the nonprofit, and then Madam City Attorney, you can give a legal overview,
Sure.
just concept of a nonprofit being a conflict of interest.
Sure. Thank you, Mayor. Again, there are at least 2 broad ways to go about creating a nonprofit. A nonprofit could be created by individuals in the community in and of themselves, and they could seek to align with the city and accomplish a mission. So that's one way to do it. The other way to do it is that the city can create it, and attached to tonight's staff report is a white paper by the League of California Cities. And if you look on the top of page 3 of that white paper, it says cities are authorized to establish, fund, and operate nonprofits. So again, this is a very early discussion of the concept of, are we going to maybe add some structure and resource in order to achieve a goal. There's a range of ways of doing that, all perfectly legal. And if I said something wrong, the city attorney will correct me.
You did not say anything wrong. And just adding to that, Mr. Mayor, I think your city manager has outlined it correctly. Devil, of course, in the details with respect to technical conflicts of interest. But as I sit here today, I know that it can be done in a manner that is fully legal and addresses the issue of conflicts of interest.
Okay, thank you so much. Next, we'll go to Council Member Wizard and then Council Member Campbell.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And I don't work for MidPen. I don't work for a nonprofit housing developer, but it's been my experience that they tend to focus on larger projects, maybe 20 apartments at a minimum. I think there was the Van Buren Senior Housing in Monterey behind the police station. I want to say it was like 18 units. And so if we're talking about 2 or 4 or 6, it's going to be hard to find a big name nonprofit housing developer that's going to do those sorts of smaller infill, take a dirt lot in the middle of a block and turn it into housing. It's just not, it doesn't scale for their mission, as city manager said earlier. What fits for us, what fits for them, it's too small of a project for them to bring their resources to bear, which is why you don't see that happening. Otherwise they would do that. As far as there being a lot of nonprofits in Seaside, I totally agree with that. And they do wonderful work. None of them, however, are doing the work of building homes. which is why we're having this conversation. So I see the opportunity to do this as not taking away from those nonprofits, because we wouldn't be competing with their business model, but also not taking away in the form of the grant making and the philanthropic giving, because it's my understanding that the way that this nonprofit is funded is through the leasebacks and the rental and the sales of the units it creates, so as not to be dependent on the city's general fund, and so as not to take from the community foundation the money that would otherwise go to CPY, the money that would otherwise go. Now that could be wrong, but I don't know that I would support something down the line, because we're not voting right now on a nonprofit that relied on soaking up the money that's currently being accessed by all the wonderful nonprofits in our community. I would look to see a nonprofit that is self-sustaining or has a different funding mechanism. There's a lot of stuff that we can get into the details of, but just topically, I think that this is a great idea that we should forge ahead with. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Campbell.
Thank you, Mayor. Just for clarification's point, did Councilmember Wizard, is he saying move forward with the idea of a nonprofit? My personal interest in all of this is moving forward as quickly and efficiently as possible, and I hope that's what comes out of this. So if Councilmember Wizard could tell me what he's urging we move forward with, I'd appreciate that.
Through the mayor.
Of course, go ahead.
Let's sprint and get this thing off the ground.
The nonprofit.
Yeah, let's start doing stuff. And now that's not a vote by any means, just I fully support us barreling ahead to get this work done.
Okay, thank you for clarifying that. I'm going to emphasize that again. I really appreciate that last presentation we had, because that was a plan we could work from, and I would like to get this thing, whether it is a nonprofit, off the ground, and if we do well, actually, let me back up a bit. This entire meeting is being recorded. Is that correct, City Attorney or City City Clerk?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you. So I feel for the people who weren't able to get in right away, but at least there's an absolute record that can be reviewed, and our discussion as well as public comment can be heard. So I've clarified we need to act. I'm leaning towards a nonprofit, and the idea, if without having MidPen or Cheese Bars or the other nonprofits here to represent themselves, hopefully they will. We can look into it, or maybe I will, and see if they agree that they don't want to take on small projects like that. But if either way, whether we set up our own nonprofit or we partner with another nonprofit, and we are contributing city funds from our $6.6 million, one, that's, they read this in the white paper, we want to be sure that we can go back and audit what happened with those funds. And unless we are very explicit about that, we might not be able to do that. I just want to throw that out there. So we're going to be sure we have the ability to audit what happens with our funds. And then of course, we'll have to consult some sort of understanding with other nonprofits as far as, if we contribute X, they're going to contribute X times, 1 or X times 1.25 or whatever. So, and, again, details to be worked out. If any of these developments happen on city property, city-owned property, which it sounds like that's the direction we're going, they will have to come back to the city, to us, to get approval. And I see that as a way to control the, kind of have the say as far as what's going on the property that's owned by the city of Seaside. Would that be correct, Mr. City Manager?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And if this nonprofit took some city dollars from our affordable housing fund and went and used private property to do the development, they would still have to conform to all of our zoning rules and laws, and it's not like we have no control. I mean, other than what we've established the zoning, correct?
That's correct.
Okay, all right. I just want to clarify that we're not, unless we're completely negligent, we're not giving away all authority of the city to do this if we have a nonprofit. So anyway, my opinion is move forward, move quickly. I wish that the council would say that at some point that actually the concept for Canyon Del Rey was good enough to get going and be a great exhibition of a small community of prefabricated buildings, because as you may know, building materials are getting very, very expensive, and prefab buildings are probably the way to go. But yes, let's get a independent, relatively independent body to work on this and get it done as quickly as possible. Those are my comments. Thank you.
Anyone else? I'll just make a couple comments. Again, I want to make sure I'm clear as clear as I can be, and as clear as the city manager was. Is it's not a question between Mid-Penn or name anyone. I don't want to name them because that's not appropriate to name anyone, but affordable housing developer, and then a low-income housing nonprofit developer, and then a nonprofit that the city impanels itself. I think Councilmember Wizard said it correctly. Some of those nonprofits are well, let's be real. The nonprofit, low-income or affordable housing developer have their own mission statement, and their own work plan, and then with their business model. So some of them don't do less than 20, right? Some of them don't do less than 100, I would imagine. You go into bigger cities, right? And then their business model doesn't allow them to come to this city to do 1, 2, 20, 25, or 100 within the next 3 years, right? So we just can't say, let's go get a local nonprofit affordable housing builder and get them to start building in the city. That's not the way it works. They have their own work plan. And if your community fits into that work plan, fits into the grants that they can get, then they will come to your city to see if they can build on any land that you may have, or land that they want to buy on their own, right? So we definitely can approach them and ask them, do they want to come to our community? But the city manager already said he's done that, and we can have them do it again. It's just, I don't support waiting on that partnership. I support us doing it on our own. And that's why I mentioned before, we can build on some of those brownfields ourselves. A duplex here, 1 or 2 homes there, upzone different areas, whatever you guys want to do, we can do that tomorrow, because, relatively soon, if it has water and the things of that nature. So my thing is create our own nonprofit, and it's going to have oversight. The city manager said it's independent because we don't want to politicize some of their dealings. But if it's a nonprofit we create, then we're going to create their bylaws and their infrastructure. So some of the conflicts that Councilmember Campbell mentioned can make sure we don't include them. But that process goes before the city council. That's a long process. So the public definitely can weigh in there. We can definitely partner with other low income or affordable housing developers. We have hundreds of acres on a former Fort Worth. I support building hundreds of housing that people can afford, right? Not just based on the market rate, but actually can afford. Those making, I said $75,000, but if that's not the median that the council decides on, then we can agree what do we call that? What is that number? But we know that's going to take 1 to 2 years to do, right? So we need to operate on all cylinders. It is parcels. I got you, Mayor Pro Tem. It is parcels that we can build on some of these modular homes within a short amount of time. All we're doing is telling the city manager and the staff, city manager, go look at some of these things, look at all 5 of these different type of strategies and start moving them forward. Go as fast as you can and bring it back to us so we can weigh in and of course have the public weigh in on these ideals. So we're not picking anything tonight. If there's a concept of something you guys just want to exclude, well, just, hey, I don't support that, but we're not voting on it tonight. So it still may become before the council so you guys can weigh in again. And my last point is, again, I support the infill and the upzoning of some of these infill, and I don't think we should, the competition for some of these parcels, private developers are looking to develop, and we should encourage mixed use there. So I'm not encouraging us beat them to the point to buy up all of it, but we do own some parcels, and it is some parcels, some green fields and some neighborhoods that we all walk by that can benefit from a nice looking duplex that we can control the facade. And I support that, but my thing is I'm waiting for the city manager to come back with these ideas with his housing people. Mayor Pro Tem.
Just the more I listen to everybody with some very good ideas and ideas moving forward, which is positive. I'm just going to go back to an idea that I mentioned earlier. One, I think we need to include Monterey Peninsula Unified School District. I think there's some opportunities on lands availability in a cooperative effort. 2, I think, there's nothing wrong with listening. I think if we, and I'm probably going to get the name, Housing for Humanity, whatever, ISBA, developers, bringing them around a round table or an open meeting, or however you, at the Oldemeyer Center, as we go into these different levels, yellow and orange and all that, and actually hearing what they have, hearing what the roadblocks are, and seeing how we can move. The city has a very limited resource of staff. I think if we hear more ideas rather than reinventing the wheel by ourselves, if we can be inclusive of other groups that have done this rather than try to start our by ourselves. And that can be a nonprofit, not opposed to that. But I just think it's an invaluable, there's a lot of really important resources out there that we can bring people together and work collaboratively to move something forward rather than, which I think is being said. I just like to see a group together, or at least the invitation to hear their thoughts, hear what works and what doesn't hurt, hear what their experiences are, and then network off of that. So that's what I would like to see. I just think there's a ton of ideas out there and potential developers that can help us. Sometimes city government doesn't operate as quickly as they can for whatever reason, staffing limitations, etc. And other people can operate quicker, be it nonprofits on our own, nonprofits for themselves, or developers. I think there's just a ton of partnerships that can be created to ensure this happens, rather than going on our own as a lone fish up the stream. Anyway, that's my thought. Thank you, sir.
Okay, no, those are good thoughts. I think we're all saying the same thing. I don't think anyone is saying go it alone or just do all this alone. We have brownfields that only fit 1 or 2 homes. I don't know a developer that wants to do it. Otherwise, they would have bought the land already to do it. So that means Seaside may have to do it. Sitting around a table with other low-income housing developers or private developers, they may want to do some of the bigger parcels. That makes sense. I'm looking, eventually we have to build some homes. I don't know. The sooner you start, the sooner you get it done, right? After you do your infills, I don't support, and I know you're not saying this, and I know all the council's not saying this. I don't support waiting 3 or 4 years do all the infill before we talk about building low-income housing development or affordable housing development on the former Fort Ord over there on Seaside East. I think we need hundreds of affordable units for our workforce, for the city employees, for our teachers, for our firefighters, for our low-income seniors, right? And so I don't support waiting 3 years to start that conversation when we know it's a 4-year, 5-year building process. We know that as council members. So I'm not saying nothing is off the table. I'm saying all of these things are on the table. So I agree with all of you guys, and we can do it. City Manager, do you have any comments before we adjourn this meeting?
Only that I'm very appreciative of the council's discussion this evening. And I am most appreciative of everything is on the table and go get it done fast. Thank you so much.
Yeah, go get it started. And just for the public, it's going to come before anything we do is going to come, whether it's one ADU built by the city or it's 200 units built by a nonprofit or nonprofit not controlled by us and a nonprofit that is already here locally, it'll come before the city. Is that correct, Mr. City Manager?
Yes, sir.
Okay. All right. With that, is there any more comments from the council before we go ahead adjourn this meeting? All right. I think the city manager has enough direction. We look forward to seeing what he comes up with the next few weeks. There's been nothing else on the agenda. This meeting stands.